Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Excuse me as some of the lack of videos. Like I said in the last video, just dealing with a little bit of a cold or a little bit of a sickness. I don't know if it was the flu or if it was something in particular, but feeling a lot better. So hopefully in the next day or two, hopefully I'll be fully recovered. But yeah, we have a news roundup for this week. We have a ton of news, a ton of things to talk about this week. So while I have some energy, I'd rather get this recorded, and then we'll see about editing this later today. But we're gonna cut this short as we always do, and we're just gonna dive right on in. So coming off the weekend, we had two releases, one of which we won't really talk about because it wasn't a major release title. It was low scale, had some notable stars, but it wasn't a major IP. It was an original piece, which went off to do very well actually. The counter offering to that was, of course, the sequel to Freakier Friday. And it opened to a respectable number. Opened to a global debut of $44.5 million. And according to multiple sources, the production cost amount to at least $42 million. And there's no disclosure yet on any marketing expenses as far as I've seen, so we can only go based on assessments based on the production alone. And per that, per company expectations, at least by what I would believe the company expectations are for this to be considered very successful, the film will need to generate at least $105 million. And as for bare minimum, the film will need to generate at least $84 million. So it's honestly hard to tell how this will do. It's a respectable launch, and again, low scale production. So it would not surprise me if it ends up becoming profitable, because it's almost halfway to that bare minimum mark. I can't say it will hit any of the higher marks that it would need to hit to meet some kind of company standard. But at the same time, I also wouldn't be surprised if this had a large drop off coming into the second weekend, since publicity and general interest appears to be a little bit minimal here. I'm not seeing a lot of marketing for it. I've seen a few advertisements here and there, but nothing extreme. They did some odd cross promotion, like CVS I saw, or no, it's one of those small retail places. I forget what they're called, but it's okay, I don't know how that's gonna get people to come see this, but we'll see. It's a small investment. Excluding what we know about marketing expenses. So I think it's positioning itself well to be profitable, but I don't see it getting any higher than just bare minimum. So, but we'll see what happens. We'll see how the next few weeks transpire. There's really nothing major coming out in the next few weeks, so it might end up doing fine. But then you also have the counter film to that, Weapons, which is doing very well actually. So we'll see. We'll see how next week unfolds. But so far, not off to a bad start. So. All right, getting into some news, plenty of news actually. First thing we're going to start off with is in regards to Lego, because according to Deadline, Universal Pictures and the Lego Group have picked up a spec script entitled Inner Child, which was written by James Morrisonine. I think that's how you say his name. He's the guy who ended up directing the film I Love My Dad, which starred Patton Oswalt. They picked up that script, and they are looking to develop it into a feature-length film, and it's going to be incorporating the Lego brand. Now, according to Deadline, the original version of that script had nothing to do with the Lego brand. So this is a acquisition that is based purely on the strength of the screenplay and potentially the potential that it could have if it's presented through the medium of Lego or incorporating that of Lego. So if you're including this project, this makes it now the 5th announcement from Universal Pictures in developing Lego-based projects, 4 of which will be live-action adaptations, including a Ninjago adaptation. Now, we talked about that before, Universal, developing a bunch of Lego projects at once, and, there's a reason for that. And the reason is because of the licensing deal that is between Universal and Lego, which was a 5-year deal, because they acquired this deal with Lego back in 2020. So, and it's already 2025, so you can understand why there has been all these announcements as of late. And you can understand why this seems as it's reeking of desperation. Because all this is really doing is trying to stabilize a partnership and to salvage a contract that they're probably losing ground on. Because think about within the 5 years, because the other films that were made, the Lego Movie, Lego Batman, those were under a different regime. That was under Warner Brothers. That was, under their licensing deal. And then Universal picked it up, or at least Lego went off to a different distributor, and that's when Universal came along. And when you look at Universal's deal within the 5 years that they've had between 2020 and 2025, they've only put out one feature. That feature was piece by piece, and that ended up not doing all well. It ended up flopping at the box office. So, yeah. I mean, in all honesty, when you really think about just all the announcements that were made, there'll probably be like 1 or 2 of these ideas that may see the light of day. And everything else I feel like is just going to fade out. Because it all seems like promises to their partners. Not much so as passions or motivations for the brand itself. Or finding a way to distinguish themselves from what WB was able to do with the license. Because they want to be able to make money off of it. There's large potential that comes with Lego. There's a lot of things you can do with it, especially with, how in the Lego Movie at Warner Brothers, how they were able to incorporate a bunch of their brands in that. I think that the trouble that Universal is probably having is finding that distinction from that specific film, from that specific incarnation, and not appear to be like a lesser version of that. Because in their case, Warner Brothers, they were able to tap into basically what Ready Player One also did, which was, throw in all their brands and incorporate them within a certain medium. And maybe Universal wants to take that kind of, take that little gamble as well. That's why Piece by Piece is kind of their gateway into that. But in a more mainstream front, they're probably trying to find a different approach. So it looks like their way is to just tell stories through this prism that aren't being reliant on major IPs to facilitate or financially see bigger numbers, which is betting that audiences care purely that of Lego and not what else is on screen, which I think is a risky way to go about it. And I think going the route of live action, heavily so, I think, especially without a proven market to validate that decision, I think that looks even more risky and frankly dumb. So, I mean, we'll see how it all pans out. I honestly don't think a lot of this is going to come to fruition. I think that at best, you may in fact get one live action piece, and that's it. I don't know what this new film has to offer. I don't know if this is going to be purely that of animation or a live action attempt. From what it sounds like, it's another live action film, because the script apparently was not, incorporating Lego characters. So that's my guess anyway. But yeah, I think it just illustrates again Universal's struggles with the Lego license and trying to find a way to make it work, and trying to not have Lego running off to another studio because they wanted to be able to use the license in some regard to their benefit. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens in the next coming years, because they definitely need to get to work with all those promises they've made to their partner. So hopefully they're getting to work. So, all right, interesting story relating to Disney that came out from the Wall Street Journal. According to the Wall Street Journal, Disney had scrapped planned AI integrations for 2 of their upcoming releases. Those releases being Tron Ares, which is set to come out this October, and the live-action Moana remake, which is due to come out next year, I believe. The reason for these scrapped plans was due to fears of backlash from those decisions. Now, just discussing what those integrations were going to be, according to the Wall Street Journal, in relation to Tron Ares, the initial plans were to create a side character that incorporated AI technology, which would be utilized as both a part of the film and as part of a, quote, buzzy marketing strategy. Now, the idea was scrapped because the executives were told that Disney, quote, couldn't risk the bad publicity. Now, in relation to the live-action Moana, the initial plans were to create a digital clone, basically a deepfake, of Dwayne Johnson for some shots in the film, essentially placing his face onto another person's body so the actor can be in 2 places at once, which I feel like has happened I feel like that's happened before, but not in that respect. I feel like that there's other ways around that, but that doesn't have to be that way. But apparently Dwayne Johnson was reportedly happy with the idea. He approved of it. And the AI company Metaphysic was in discussions to work on the idea. Now, this idea was scrapped due to the 2 companies not coming to agreement, Disney and Metaphysic. They didn't see eye to eye. And Disney's fears of an impending lawsuit if they were to claim the entire film as their own, which is really odd, considering that Disney is employing them to do work for them. I don't know. It's just kind of weird. But yeah, these ideas are not happening. They are all scrapped. And here's the thing. A lot of the language being fed through this is fear of public perception. Not the materials that they're using. It's fear of what the public will say. It's to say that they're not doing it because the public has yet to accept that these integrations are taking place. Because make no mistake about it. I mean, as much as I would prefer AI stuff to not exist in this medium, as much as I would like it for not to interfere with the creative process or interfere with just employment, these are practices that all companies are participating in now. I mean, we talked about Sony, I think a few months ago. They flat out just admitted that they were going to make this a thing. It was going to become just normal practice in their studio, and it will become a normal practice for everybody in the next decade or so. And like I said, I'm not for it. I think it kind of goes against the whole artistic value of what you're making. But for the value that it is to a studio, as it stands right now, when you consider the costs that are, and this is just all how studios think. It's not the right way to think of it, but it's just how studios think. In order to bring costs down, you need to find cheaper alternatives. So for them, at least how in the form of AI is right now, it's far more cheaper than employing individuals, securing locations to shoot, blah, blah, blah. Not actually the companies themselves reconsidering how much money they put into production and, having actually bringing the cost down because of it. No, it's because, things are just expensive. I wonder why it's expensive. It's not like money just comes out of the sky, and I wonder where the money comes from. But anyways, Disney's only doing what they're doing to avoid a conversation, essentially. Like, it's literally what Disney said. They're just trying to avoid bad publicity. Because if this practice was welcomed and accepted right now, believe me, these ideas would exist in those films. And they probably still do in some form or another, just the more apparent ones they just want to get rid of because they didn't want people to bring that stuff up because that may interfere with ticket sales. So it's cheaper for them, and in some ways cheaper for us. I mean, I've seen some AI stuff pointed out from film, and sometimes it's noticeable, other times it's very subtle. But they may not be doing it here in these instances, but trust me, they're doing it elsewhere, and companies will keep doing it in the dark until it's universally accepted, and they're going to hold out until then. But we're gonna hold out talking about these things until then. But make no mistake, they are absolutely doing it, and they will continue to do it because it is cheap, and that's all they need to hear. So. All right, let's get into an interesting story here, because this relates to a series of videos that I did 2 years ago, very passionately so. This relates to SAG-AFTRA. We talked about SAG-AFTRA quite a bit on this channel back in 2023, when the whole, of course, the actors' writers' strike was in effect. I did a whole series, basically, of videos where I was talking about things that were happening during the strikes, my whole thoughts during that period of time, and, of course, the end results of that strike, which were basically really nothing. According to multiple sources, Fran Drescher, I think that's how you say her name, who is currently the president of SAG-AFTRA, apparently she will not be seeking a second term. So she will not be returning for a second term as SAG-AFTRA president. She will be stepping down. And very interesting. Now, separate from this news, going to another union, actually, the WGA. WGA actually announced some interesting stuff. 2 expulsions, 3 really, but 2 permanent ones. So following the announcement of this, the WGA expelled 2 writers, Park Chan-wook and Don McKellar, I think that's how you say his name, McKellar. Park, you guys probably are more familiar with because he did films such as Old Boy, the 2013, which I think it was the 2013 one, or was it the old one? I think it was the old one. Let me check real quick, just so I have my facts straight. Yeah, he did Old Boy, the original. So he also did The Handmaiden in 2016. So, did a few things here and there. But he and Don McKellar were expelled from the union due to writing out the HBO Max series The Sympathizer, which starred Robert Downey Jr., during the strikes. Because during the strikes, people were prohibited to not write anything, and as a form of protests. But apart from these firings, Anthony Cipriano, I think that's how you say his name, he has been suspended for writing out The Last Breath during the strikes and serving as a strike captain only until the May 1st of 2026, along with a public censor and a lifetime ban to serving as a strike captain. So, yeah, so that's particularly interesting. So all of this, right? So just squarely talking about SAG-AFTRA first, and then we'll talk about the WGA in a second. But talking about Fran's decision to not run again, I think that is. I think that just kind of paints a picture as to how people felt truly after the strikes finally simmered down and people actually looked at the kind of progress that was made. And, I think that she looks at her supporters, which are probably super small. And I just think the union themselves would be mostly in support with that decision anyway, with her just leaving. Because again, when you look at how things were during the strike, there was very little progress that was made. Very little progress. They made, they got basically a pay raise, a small one, and remember, she advocated for her union to be paid more money than the WGA. Meanwhile, both unions would be trying to support each other, showing unity and stuff like that, but yet SAG over here is trying to get more money for her union than for the writers, or than the writers, getting a certain amount. It's just, all that, and just how that strike was handled, the very petty nature of it all. I was never for the strikes outside of the conversations that were with the AI. everything else to me felt like a moot point. It just, nothing felt very substantial. It was only until those the companies finally laid down the gauntlet did these unions finally stop complaining and, basically moved on. And I think the unions themselves recognize that right now, especially with SAG, realizing that, like, we really didn't get much anywhere, and she kind of led us on with these ideas. And, obviously people have their ideas of fair pay or whatever like that. As the co-host of John Campia's show once said, you don't get what you want, you get what you negotiated. And she led the charge on what I believe was this bullyish attempt to get her union to be paid more than others, even though they would scream unity all the time, But, talking about the WGA and what they're doing over here, I find that also very interesting because you're telling me that you will ban 2 writers for simply writing out a project, which I understand they shouldn't have, right? But let's just be honest. I mean, there were people likely writing at this time anyway because they have deadlines to meet. I'm pretty sure the WGA was aware of it as well. So, I mean, let's just be completely honest on that. I understand rules are rules, right? And, what's right is right, So, but you're only then going to give a temporary ban to someone who served as one of your strike captains? Like, what does that tell you? Like, to me, that screams of favoritism. That's not being fair. That's just being cherry picking. That's just being selective. And that's not right at all. So it just shows to show you of how these unions kind of operate. And, it's an inkling, kind of a preview of sorts of how they kind of manage things. And it's not particularly clean. WGA, I'm not like more as familiar with. I'm just kind of with that decision. I just think that just is kind of like, okay, really, like that you're gonna ban people over here, but not ban this person over here because he had more of a benefit to you at a certain time. It's like, no, come on. And then the for the SAG presidents, like, I just don't know who largely was going to support you after the strikes. So it makes all the sense to me. And I think that it's personally the best thing that the union can get at this point in time is someone like her removed. Because she really didn't do any favors for them. And I think that it just kind of hurt them more than anything in terms of reputation and in terms of just, relations to that of studios. So. All right, let's get into some little news bits here and there. First of which, just checking the time on my camera. First of which we're going to talk about is that of Sony, because they are moving forward with a spin-off from Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse in the form of Spider-Punk. This is early in development with Ajon Sin and Daniel Kaluuya, who voiced the character in Across the Spider-Verse. Both are going to be co-writing the screenplay. No release date given at this time. I think this is pretty... this makes sense. It seemed pretty inevitable for the series to start branching out of its, trilogy of sorts, especially given the recent failures with the other Spider-Man spin-offs. I am not shocked that they would now want to gravitate towards this. If you want more Spider-Man out there, this is pretty much the way you want to go. So makes all the sense to me. I don't personally care for Spider-Verse. It doesn't really interest me. But from a financial standpoint, I completely understand why they wish to capitalize on it. It's a popular little series, and if you want to do more in that world, there's a lot of places to go. So I can understand why they want to keep tapping into that well. So. All right, following from that, according to multiple sources, a follow-up to Final Destination Bloodlines is in development. Laurie Evans Taylor, who co-wrote the previous film, Bloodlines, she will be returning to pen the screenplay, and there's no release date at this time. Just like my thoughts on Spider-Punk, this makes all the sense given the recent success that was Bloodlines, which was done at low scale and hopefully is maintained with this follow-up. And, just literally what has made money this year. I mean, again, this should be an indication to studios that smaller budgets are key. They're key. This film was made for cheap. How much was it made for? Let's just so I can do the number. How much was Final Destination Bloodlines? How much did you cost? $50 million. Yeah. So, not as bad. Not too bad. Yeah. So, hopefully it's maintained for cheap. And, again, horror is the future. I mean, this film went off to do $285 million. Yeah. So, I want to do a video where I compare horror to superheroes in the past 10 years. You'll see that horror just does twice, maybe even triple as much what superheroes do on a regular basis. And yes, there's more horror that usually comes out each year than superheroes. But again, it should be very, very obvious at this point. But yeah, makes all the sense for them to do another Final Destination. Makes all the sense in the world right now. So. Speaking of things that make sense, in this case, not really. According to multiple sources, James Gunn, who is the boss at DC Studios and recently helmed the Superman project this year, he is reportedly writing and helming the next installment in the, quote, Super Family. Now, there's no release date announced at this time, and there's no specifications as to what they're addressing. They're not saying it's a Superman 2, and I firmly believe that this is the first sign that they're not moving forward with a sequel to Superman. It sounds like they're pivoting in the same way that Man of Steel transpired, which is to say that, because the next film that we saw was Batman vs Superman. It wasn't a direct sequel to Man of Steel. So I think this is what's following suit from that. Because this film has not done well. Some people are saying it might in fact end up at $700 million, which I think James Gunn's hoping that's the case. But again, that's not great. This film should be doing a lot better. It's just going to squeak by Man of Steel potentially, and that's not great. Or may not. There's projections as low as like 640, and that's, I think, meeting at Man of Steel's numbers. So it's not great. It's really not great. It just goes to show that doing Superman out the gate wasn't exactly the best of strategies, and I don't think that they're as confident to just sell the sequel, basically Superman 2. So I think at this rate, then you're either going to see this meet at that number or below the gross that was Man of Steel, which we've established wasn't exactly a strong pull to begin with. And the company won't say anything like that because they already are very invested and they have to promote their products, right? But I have to imagine that they're not as happy with the results, regardless of what their PR tells us. So, and this, I believe, demonstrates that lack of confidence. Because James Gunn may be the creative guys, but remember, WB is the investor. So if they don't want to do a Superman 2, they will let James Gunn know. And it sounds like they have, at least as far as how this sounds. But yeah, at best, this sounds like literally that of the Super Family. You're probably going to get Superman and Supergirl in the same film. Krypto might come back. But again, not Superman 2. It just sounds more like, let's focus on an ensemble of characters, not just Superman, Let's try to get other things to sell around Superman rather than focusing on Superman himself. So again, not Superman 2. And it really doesn't smell like that. And given where things are financially, not entirely surprised by hearing that. So. Speaking of things that I am not surprised by hearing and also not as happy to hear, I heard about this a few weeks ago, but I didn't talk about it then because it was a rumor. And now we have confirmation on that news thanks to Deadline. And I am not particularly happy, but I understand why they have to do it. So, according to Deadline, Michael Bay, who most notably worked on the Transformers franchise, he is reportedly in talks with Paramount Pictures to return to the series with a, quote, new version. So two things there. So we know that they want to reboot again, and they want Michael Bay to come back. So this illustrates the desperation of the company to find a way to make this license work, because there's two paths: either make it work or sell it off at this point. Because as it stands, I would not be shocked to see Paramount lose out on the film rights and Hasbro just seeks out a different distributor, because this is essentially their last chance to make this brand work again, because it's been well over, I think, 10 years since they've done major business with the brand. Last night they did, I don't think it ended up doing terribly, but it didn't set the expectations for the company. And then you had Bumblebee, which did okay because it was lower scale. Rise of the Beast, which didn't do well. Transformers 1, which didn't do well. So you are in a very, very tight spot. So I understand why they are resulting to go back to the person that made them billions of dollars in the first place. Creatively speaking, Michael Bay is not the answer here. I don't hate his films as much as everyone else does, partially because I'm biased in that it was my introduction to Transformers, and that's when I became super obsessed and became a big fan. However, I fully acknowledge that the quality of those films don't match the quality of the more recent movies, which is to say that the modern age is much more compelling than what came before. But it's not about really quality at this point as much as it's about quantity, just getting things out there, and also quite literally financially trying to find ways to make money. So, to give credit where credit's due, Michael Bay's films, they've always made close to $1 billion a piece, so I understand why they're reaching out to him. I completely understand. But as a fan, I'm personally disappointed because I know how he treats the series, and I just don't think that it's done always in the best of ways. But from a financial standpoint, you can't argue with what he brings to the series, dude. So it's really unfortunate, and it really illustrates where Paramount is with this brand, which is to say that they are running out of options, they're running out of ideas, and this is kind of their last straw. So, yeah. The inner fan of me would have liked something else, but you can't argue with the money. At least that's how this works. Money is everything. And in this case, anyway, the money was with Michael Bay. So I understand why he has to come back. So hopefully with this new reboot, all I can hope for is that he is actually going to try, and he is not just going to do what he always does. But knowing who he is, we're going to get more of the same. And that's a bit unfortunate. So we'll see what happens. But I'm a bit disappointed. So. Alrighty. Next bit of news we're going to talk about is in relation to the upcoming sequel to The Passion of the Christ, The Resurrection of the Christ, which is still being directed by Mel Gibson. This film is reportedly being split into 2 feature films. First of which being released on March 26, 2027, and the second being released on May 6, 2027. Per the reports, the decision appears to have come from both a creative and a financial place, so this isn't just purely from it doesn't appear to be just just that of like Mel Gibson was making 2 separate films. It was, there's a big film here, I'm going to try to create 2 separate features, and the studio came in and said, okay, yeah, we'll play with that, and we'll try to do these 2 major releases within certain time frames. Essentially, if you remember the film series that was supposed to be that of Horizon last year with Kevin Costner, this sounds very similar to that. And I feel like this is going to meet a similar fate that Horizon ended up with, which is to say that you may or may not see that second film, depending on the box office of the first film. Now, in the case of Horizon, the reason why no one really showed up to see it was because of its release window. Its runtime, too. I think that was like a 2.5-hour film, and I said back then, I don't know who is going to care to see a Western in the summertime. I don't see where you put that sort of film. And again, a lack of nobility. I mean, outside of who's in the director's chair, there wasn't really a whole lot to sell outside of just cowboys, Sorry. And that's... I hit my mic, sorry. And that's not enough, at least to drum up major sales. So I could see this playing a very similar scenario for potentially the exact same reasons for why Horizon failed. Because also the first movie, March 6, 2027, first movie is looking to play against The Legend of Zelda. I already think that's a bad move, in my opinion, because Legend of Zelda, we'll see how that performs, but obviously that's going to have way more notability than this, And also, who's really craving to see Christian-based stories in theaters? I mean, I know that The Passion of Christ is a very well-known piece of very well-known Christian film, but it just doesn't play as big as other genres do. I mean, rarely do we see these films, Passion of Christ being the rarity to where a film like that went off to do tons of money. Like, I seriously doubt that in this modern age, a lot of people even are familiar with the Passion of the Christ, So I don't see the rationale behind this. I just feel like it's going to shape up to be something potentially disastrous because I just don't think people care as much. I really don't. I don't think they care as much as the studio believes that as much as the studio has faith in it. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I would change that release from that March release, because you're already setting yourself up for failure with going against Zelda. So we'll see what happens, but I don't see good things coming out of that. So. Alrighty, we got a couple of trailers to discuss for today, and then we're going to call it a day. So let's get into it. So the first trailer we're going to discuss is the official trailer for Highest to Lowest. Now, we talked about this when the first trailer came out, and I was not rooting for it because of my belief of not ever touching Akira Kurosawa's work. And I still feel that same way here, in that, I still don't believe that a modern day culture is suitable for the work of Akira Kurosawa, because Kurosawa's work was made within a certain framework and within that a certain time and very specific cultural thinking and depictions. So I'm not entirely convinced that this had to be retold as much as it could have been its own thing, because the idea of just remaking a work of Akira Kurosawa's, it's evident through this footage, if you are familiar with the film High and Low, which is what this film is inspired by. It's very evident, there's that train sequence, there's very specific shots that illustrate, that the apartment, and when things start to happen, won't spoil it, but, it's apparent that this is taking inspiration and is, taking beats from that original film. But I just think that having this modern hip hop angle, makes it less valuable in my eyes. I'm not saying that he can't make a story like that work or function. It's just having to reconcile with the fact that it is a remake to Akira Kurosawa's work. It just makes it feel less, It does appear like if we're just going to detach my own feelings of how I feel about people touching Akira Kurosawa's work, judging it on its own merit, it does appear to carry an interesting ensemble. Like Denzel Washington is always interesting to watch. I like Jeffrey Wright. It has the capacity to instill the same thematic qualities of the original Baird. like the same sort of social commentary, uh, the whole motivation behind that of one's wealth or money, what motivates a person, their character, all that stuff. I think that could still be illustrative in this iteration. I just don't see the general value of remaking such work rather than just doing your own story. I mean, if you're about this flavor, basically, like if you're about hip hop and a modern edge, it may be interesting for you. But as it stands, I'm not sure if that mindset is suitable for this sort of story and from the origin point, just Kurosawa. I just don't think it really works, and it doesn't look bad. I'm just saying that I just don't think it captures my interest purely because of my attachments to Kurosawa and generally by just what I'm seeing. So yeah, it doesn't really do much for me. I mean, even if I was interested, this is coming on Apple TV Plus, and as I've said before, my account got hacked a long time ago. So even if I was interested, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I would be more morbidly curious, just to see how they approach that story. But generally, I'm just not completely captivated or fascinated. So we'll see. But as it stands, I'm not really that convinced. So. All right. Next trailer we're going to talk about is for a film called Ella McCay. This is starring Emma Mackey, Jamie Lee Curtis, Camille Nashiani, I think that's how you say his name, Ayo Edebiri, I think that's how you say her name, sorry, Albert Brooks, and Woody Harrelson. It's being written and directed by, excuse me, James L. Brooks, who you guys may know for films such as Terms of Endearment, As Good as It Gets, and Spanglish with Adam Sandler. This is the first time that he has directed a film in like 15 years, I think, based on his filmography. And this has a release date for December 12th, 2025. And if it feels like a movie that was made by somebody who hasn't made a film in 15 years, you wouldn't be wrong in thinking that way, because it definitely feels a bit dated. That's the feeling that I get from the trailer. Definitely feels a bit out of touch. Definitely feels a bit just, frankly, a bit dry. It doesn't really capture my interest. I don't find the writing to be as strong or as charming as it thinks it is, because it's trying to use its screenplay as a lot more, how do you say it? Like the writing is they're hoping is the greatest strength that can come from it, from the film. And I don't think that is really coming across. Because it seems like to be the leading force of the film. Cast-wise, it seems okay. It seems appealing in some ways, but ultimately I find this to be something you find on streaming. Like I would honestly expect this to be on Hulu, not something that I would catch on theaters. So it just seems very comfortably casual. I think that's the way I'll put it, but not to where it is very appealing. It just seems very, like it has a 90s flair to it, and that might be due to the fact that this is, again, a filmmaker who hasn't done anything in the past 15 years. Like, it feels like, the best way I can put it is that it's more fitting as a blockbuster rental than a movie ticket. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it just feels like something that you would go ahead and rent at Blockbuster. You have like a date and you go to Blockbuster and you're like, oh, hey, let's check out this film, Ella McCay. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like that kind of thing. I think if the script was better, my interest may have peaked a little bit more, but as it stands, I don't really find much interest with this. It just seems very, very casual, and not casual to where that makes it more interesting. It just makes it a little more just tasteless in my eyes. So that's my thoughts on that. All right, next trailer we're going to discuss is for a film called J. Kelly. This is starring George Clooney, Adam Sandler, Laura Dern, Billy Crudup, Riley Keough, I think that's how you say her. I butchered the hell out of her last name, sorry. Emily Mortimer, who's also co-writing the script with the director, and Greta Gerwig. This is being co-written and directed by Noah Baumbach, who you guys may be familiar with movies such as Frances Ha, which I actually enjoyed. The Mary Rotritz Stories, I think that's how you say the name, had Adam Sandler in it. I actually have never seen this. Heard it was good. Marriage Story, which I really enjoyed. And White Noise, which I was not particularly a fan of. This has a release date for November 14th, 2025 on Netflix. And I gotta say, I actually think this looks interesting. I like the idea of social distance embedded within the lens of a person surrounded by fame, because it looks like it's going to be addressing the idea of how one becomes a tool, amongst society, and their function is kind of leads to that greater distance between his world and the normal world. Like his desires to have a connection, but his fame and his image always are going to get in the way of that. That seems kind of typical and kind of clunky in some ways, maybe as a story, but as it's kind of representing it, the way, I liked how the trailer shows him repeating his name, and every time that he repeats his name, he sounds more exhausted and more fatigued as the trailer plays. Because it is the face that he needs to wear, even if it isn't completely him, or if it's not something that he even cares to be anymore. Maybe he wishes to be something more. Maybe he wishes to be something less, even. I find that framework to be rather interesting and potentially funny. There's some good jokes in the trailer as well. So yeah, I'll be on the lookout for this. And I also, again, I'm glad to see Adam Sandler getting more proper work than just another throwaway comedy, which we will get to Happy Gilmore 2 very soon once I get better. But yeah, this seems interesting. I will definitely be on the lookout for this. Definitely seems interesting. So. All right, next trailer we're going to discuss is the official trailer for a film called Rental Family. This is starring Brendan Fraser, as well as Takehiro Hira, I think that's how you say the name, and Mari Yamamoto, I think that's how I say their names. I probably butchered their names, my apologies. This is being co-written and directed by Hikiri, I think that's how I say the name, who directed a film called 37 Seconds, which I've never seen. This has a release date for November 21st, 2025, and I have to say I'm a little at odds with it, especially with how it's choosing to tell what is essentially the phrase, fake it till you make it. Because the whole idea of this is that it is an actor who is placed in a family, and he has to convince this family that he is a certain thing, or at least convincing a little child that he is this thing, which hence why the film's called Rental Family. And it kind of makes for this idea, because there's this whole thematic study of observing and dealing with genuine emotions and with individuals, that's what I mean by fake it till you make it, because it's quite literally taking it in that direction, where he has to fake it, and then ultimately he is going to understand things through that process, that whole acting thing that he's doing. I find that whole thing a little problematic because the story is being told through the eyes of an actor, and I just think that it is a little bit, I think that it just makes things a little strange, and I think that it makes things, again, a little distant in terms of just my understandings of the function of that study, or how we're attacking it. So I have my issues of how it's literally telling that story. Sorry if I bumped the mic again. Sorry for hitting it. But otherwise, I mean, there seems like there's potential for tenderness and some charm. It's visually sharp and clean. I'll give it that. Um, I just don't. I just think that the literal telling of that story, I think, is going to create more clashes than actually some layered understandings. So, so we'll see how it goes. But at least for me, anyway, I'm not. I find more issues with how it literally is, with what the story literally is. But I'm not particularly interested, just generally speaking, by what I saw. So. And finally, we have the official trailer for a film called Shelby Oaks. This is starring Camille Sullivan, Brendan Sexton III, Michael Beach, Robin Bartley, and Keith David. This is being written and directed by Chris Stuckman, who is in his feature debut. You guys may be familiar with him. He is a notable YouTuber face in the film community. This has a release date for October 3rd, 2025, being distributed through Neon. Now, I will say this before I give my thoughts. I will say this. I think that it should be commended that somebody, given the fact that, a YouTuber has been able to make the climb, and, be able to gain access to a notable studio and a notable filmmaker, because Mike Flanagan actually executive produced and apparently got about $1 million worth of additional photography after a screening that happened at Fantasia Fest, I believe, last year. So I do think, though, that it is unfortunate that, such a thing also occurs, because his credibility as a film critic is now tainted. As I think some people have outlined, with how he now goes about talking films, only speaking in a positive light. I understand where that comes from, because he has to, he can no longer, project his thoughts, because then he starts to lose access to the jobs that he wishes to seek. I would just say to stop being a film critic altogether. That way you don't seem as much of a hypocrite, or seem as much as a shill. But that's the price that you pay when you want to work in Hollywood, which is to speak in a specific way if you want to remain in business. But that all being said, from what I saw, there's not much of an impression that this provides outside of the establishment of a murky tone. Now, it appears to be taking some inspiration from films such as Blair Witch Project, with some of the found footage type aesthetic, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And again, at least by how, by technical choices and by aesthetic, kind of reminds me of those specific films. I can't say my voice just went up, sorry. I can't say that I'm very impressed, nor can I say I'd seek this out. I mean, me and horror don't really get along really in the theater, but from what I saw, really, it doesn't completely grab my attention. But again, it is to be commended to see him branch out and to see anybody, make that leap. I mean, as much as I think that, I don't agree with the whole morality, or I don't agree with doing such a thing, because I feel in the way you're just shilling out to corporations. That's why I always do things by my own interest, not by the interest of others, or by servicing another, I just don't find that mentality all that understanding, or as how do I say it? Like, it just takes away more credibility than establish more credibility. And I don't know, in terms of what we have here, I don't have a whole lot to say, because the trailer doesn't really have a whole lot to say. I just think that personally for me, I'm not particularly interested, but hopefully it does well. I mean, I'm not going to root against him. I wish him all the best. But in terms of what I'm seeing, not really much for me. And I think he would be better off if you just leave YouTube. Just move on and do your thing, because as it stands, he just looks more like a hypocrite than anything else. But film-wise, wishing the best for him. So, but yeah. Those are my thoughts for this week, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Big video this week, so hope you guys enjoyed all of these topics. Let me know all your thoughts on all these things. Your thoughts, of course, your guys' thoughts on Freakier Friday, your thoughts on another Lego film being in development, Disney scrapping AI stuff, Fran Drescher stepping down as a SAG president, Spider-Punk, Final Destination 7, James Gunn doing a super family film, Michael Bay comeback Transformers, Resurrection of the Christ splitting in two, highest to lowest trailer, Ella McCay trailer, Jay Kelly trailer, Rental Family trailer, and Shelby Oaks trailer. Let me know all your thoughts on all these things in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.